author, columnist, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, talk show host, and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio. Wishing you a very Merry Christmas from all the team over here. We've got quite the show ahead of us this week. We're going to be looking at what the biggest events of 2025 were and what the implications are. Please remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio with our post-Christmas edition of Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides. We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's enterprise reporter, Mr. Joe Schaefer. Merry Christmas and thanks for coming in, Joe. How are you?
Merry Christmas to you. Thank you.
So, Joe, we are approaching the end of the year, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how you think this year has gone. So, for some people in the United States and abroad, this has been the worst year in the history of their minds. We saw Donald Trump re-enter the White House after being told that for the 87th time that the writing was on the wall, and he re-entered the White House. And shock and horror, he actually went and tried to do just about everything that he said he was going to do, which not everybody is happy about, I would say. But and then there's the international stage where Donald Trump has, I don't know, what's the best way to say this, Joe? Reasserted the United States as the dominant political force on the globe. And again, just as many people are equally upset about that.
And some of us on the right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like some people on the left, well, almost everybody on the left, and some people on the political right as well, who see Donald Trump's, I wouldn't call them interferences with world affairs, but dipping his toes into world affairs.
In a way that his supporters did not vote for.
Sure. Well, we're going to talk about that now. So let's begin this by saying, when Donald Trump came into office at the beginning of the year, how do you think he did?
To me, the most interesting thing of 2025 is it went by so fast. Am I wrong about that? To me, it came by in a blur.
This happens the older you get.
Yeah, I am getting old now, but I've been old for a while now. In previous years, didn't seem to go by this fast. It seemed like yesterday Kamala had their little coup and took over for Biden, and now we've already had 1 year of Trump under our belts. And I think he's done a lot of good. He's I think the most important thing he's done is pursuing the mass deportation operation and it becoming clear cut that the vast majority of the American people are with him on this. So, when the media wants to paint it as a horrible thing and, oh my God, these people, they just want to live their lives and they're being ripped away. And everyone's like, no, deport them, deport more. We want more deportations. So they really can't spin it like that the way they wanted to, the way they probably did to a certain extent in 2017, the first year of the first Trump administration. He is much more firmer in the saddle on the things he wants to pursue, which is why, and I'm just speaking in my own personal opinion here, it is dismaying for a lot of us to see him pursuing things that I don't feel are in his wheelhouse. We don't want to see him being interventionist abroad. We're not interested in Israel and Ukraine and in settling. We're interested in here in America. And I find it very interesting. His political enemies encourage him to get involved in Europe, in the Middle East. And they're the ones attacking him for getting him involved with Venezuela in the drug smuggling. Whereas the classic America First approach is Monroe Doctrine. We have this is our hemisphere. This is our porch. We're taking care of our neighborhood and let the rest of the world take care of itself. Trump's opponents are like, take care of the rest of the world, but we don't want you involved here in our hemisphere. You're a war criminal if you sink these boats. The classic America First approach is defend America here at home. And to me, Trump is doing that with these going after these drug smuggling boats, cleaning up our hemisphere, He is not doing that when he's getting involved in the Middle East and settling conflicts abroad. It's is not part of his mission as America First advocates see it.
Okay. Yeah, I see your point there. Now, as to the Venezuela one, yes, that's very much the interventionism there. That is very much an America First position, I think, because the drugs are coming in. It's undeniable. The crime that's associated with that is impacting Americans. And then rather than wait until it's crossed the border to try and deal with it, he's trying to deal with it, as you say, just beyond his front porch. There's a car hurtling towards your front porch. You know, you do something about it before it gets to your front porch. I get that. Now, in terms of what's happening, I presume you're talking about the war in Ukraine and what seems to be, and I hope we're not recording this at the wrong time, what seems to be over is the conflict in Israel. And about Donald Trump getting involved in that. Now, you're right that a lot of the people are from the America First position. They don't see the advantage to America there. But I'm going to play the devil's advocate a little here, and I'm sure you won't end up agreeing with my position. This is not necessarily even my position, but I'd like to present this to you. Is America is safer when the world is at peace. Would you agree?
I mean, that sounds like classic Dick Cheney, Donald Trump. That sounds like you want to give your defense contractor donors a pile of money.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
We're sick of that. I know you know what I'm saying. We're so sick of hearing those. Can I use the term aphorism again? We're so sick of hearing that talk and the problems of Americans here at home being neglected. So my eyes immediately begin to roll when I hear that talk, because we've been hearing it for 30 years. Started with George Bush Sr. and all our treasure, our time, and everything is going overseas. And the problems here at home just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So no, honestly, it is not in America's interest if there's peace. And I don't care about the Middle East. I really don't. I care about American citizens being murdered here at their homes by an invasion of illegal aliens that have been deliberately imported here by people who have a malevolent goal in mind to destroy American sovereignty and what this country used to be about.
Yeah, so coming back to something that you said earlier about how that there is this growing public support, or that public support is already there for the deportation of illegal aliens. Now, I think it's pretty fascinating because you can actually see it in the polling that this was. I mean, the best poll that there was for this kind of thing was Donald Trump getting elected, right? He said he's going to deport them, and then he got elected. And he won all 7 swing states, and he won all these counties. And he won the popular vote, which kind of tells you that the people were backing that. Now, the media would have us, the left-leaning media, I should be more specific about, would have the public believe that at large, they believe Donald Trump has gone too fast and too far. And I'm not entirely sure I believe that because of how polls are so often phrased. So, for example, if you ask, do you support deporting illegal aliens who have committed a crime in the United States? I think the support for that is somewhere around 80+%. All right. It's quite straightforward. It's an 80-20 issue, and the 80% is with Donald Trump. But then what the pollsters do at the behest of those people hiring them to do the polls is they say, would you support deporting someone who, and then add several caveats like they've never committed any crime, they've only done this, they've only done that. Would you support deporting them? And so they say, there's far less people who support that. And so they say that support for Donald Trump's deportation agenda is waning. And I don't think it is. And my evidence that I don't think the support for that is waning is that what we're seeing in other countries, and I know you don't like to talk about other countries, Joe Schaefer, because what have they got to do with America, right? But they're good.
I'm not apologizing for that.
I know. They're good indicators. When Britain sneezes, America catches a cold, and vice versa. And what we're seeing in the UK, for example, is Nigel Farage's Reform Party, which is very much focused on currently stopping the influx of illegal migrants coming over on boats, and then being housed in nice hotels and being given everything they could ever want, and never being allowed to deport them. But they're also talking about the cutting out any forms of benefits or things for people who have just essentially arrived and decided this is where they want to stay, without any formal invitation or work visa, things like that. And the Reform Party has won or come tops. I think it's over 100, the last 150 polls that have taken place, they've come top. Their polling average is double the Labour and Tory parties. So it's the two of them combined, the Labour Party and the Tory Party combined. And what that tells me is there's an appetite for this. Now, I don't think that appetite would be there if the British people hadn't seen what Donald Trump had managed to effectuate without particularly changing any laws. But he managed to close the border, which, for the previous 4 years, we were told there's nothing can be done about it. We're doing our best. And he managed to pretty much close it down to a trickle coming across. And I think that's really impacted what the rest of the world sees as possible. They've made it the art of the possible. Joe Schaefer, I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you ever so much for being with us. Wishing you a Happy New Year.
Thanks. Happy New Year to you.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're here on Liberty Nation Radio, wishing you a very Merry Christmas. We hope you all had a wonderful season, and we hope that your bellies are well satisfied for the wonderful Christmas meals and the Christmas family get-togethers. And we're joined, very fortunately, by Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's Economics Affairs editor. Merry Christmas to you, Andrew.
Thank you, and happy Festivus, or belated Festivus.
It's all about the Festivus with these economists. So, Andrew, what I'd like to talk about today is what were the Christmas gifts that were given to the American people, the politicians that shape and steer the ships of industry? Who really got the best Christmas gifts this year, and who got the lumps of coal?
Oh, no doubt, Wall Street. Traders, investors, whether retail or institutional, if you were the market this year, for the most part, you made a lot of money. I mean, everything has an all-time high. The Dow Jones, the S&P, NASDAQ flirted with a record high. Gold price at 4,400. Silver's at $65. Treasury yields still pay a nice handsome 4%. So even if you're in cash and you have money market funds, you're still benefiting from it. So, the way people are penalized, I guess, would just be savers who put their money into the bank account and getting their 0.5% interest a year. So, but overall, I mean, if you were a trader and you bought an index fund in the Dow Jones in January, or you bought during the massive sell-off in the springtime, you are just absolutely killing it. And it seems like nothing can stop this market too. Yeah. Heading into 2026, nothing's going to stop it, because even if there's a sell-off, you have $7 trillion of cash sitting on the sidelines for people to invest and buy the dips. So, I guess if you miss this train in 2025, you can only hope there's going to be a sell-off, and then you can deploy your cash like Warren Buffett.
Even if there isn't a sell-off, it still seems likely that the economy is going to continue on an upwards trajectory, perhaps not as much as it did in 2025 for 2026. But it seems to me, we always wonder, like, we always ask the question, like, who benefited this year? Who got the nice toys in their Christmas stocking? And you answered straight off, Wall Street and investors. And the reality is, though, Andrew, is that of course they're the ones that benefited, because they're investing their money. And the people who didn't invest their money didn't make any returns other than, as you say, the 0.5% they get in their everyday current account at the bank, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. And then on the flip side of that, you could say, well, the ones who got lumps of coal were the shorts, the people who betted against the market, who betted against, Nvidia, Tesla, whatever the case, or are betting against artificial intelligence right now. They keep suffering loss after loss, and they can't crawl back from that at all, because the market just is on an upward trajectory. All the forecasts heading in 2026 are saying, okay, well, this train can keep on going, mainly because one of the biggest factors that we talked about earlier is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not only cutting interest rates, it's also easing policy, meaning it's injecting liquidity into the financial markets, at least during the first quarter of 2026.
Yeah, don't say quantitative easing. Say quantitative easing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you watch Jerome Powell's press conference, the December post meeting press conference, and he wanted to avoid saying quantitative easing. He just said, unwinding the tightness and saying, oh well, we got to ensure there's enough money in the system heading into tax filing season, so it's not a drain on, because there's been volatility in the funding markets, short term funding markets anyway.
So, what about President Trump this year? Was in terms of if economic Santa Claus came down the chimney, was Trump a very good little boy or a very bad little boy?
Well, I'd say just alone on the one big beautiful bill, and that's something that's going to benefit pretty much all Americans. Because despite the criticism that it's tilted toward the wealthy, you look at the numbers; it's broad based. Tax cuts are happening all over the board. A no tax on tips, that's not going to benefit a billionaire. That's going to benefit the average person, or a tax deduction for seniors. That's also going to be stimulative. So overall, this fiscal stimulus bill is going to be huge for the U.S. economy. So that alone would be a president. I guess. I mean, if you support, if you're a protectionist, you're not so much a global trade person, then that's another thing too. Because as we discussed earlier, the trade deficit is showing how tariffs are really pushing his agenda forward.
Yeah. So I think Trump's got probably as a scorecard for the year. He's done pretty well. What would you give him on a scorecard there? Anywhere between an A+ and an F-.
If he doesn't move forward to the whole tariff rebate stuff, then I'll probably give him at the very least a B. Also because of the deficit, that's an issue also. So those are two things: the deficit and this whole tariff rebate idea. I hope if he doesn't fall through with it, then I'll give him an A-. But if it is still on the table, I'd say at the very least a B.
That's not bad. That's not bad. So who got the lumps of coal then in the economics world? Which industries underperformed in this last year?
Well, I'm going to say consumers. I mean, they still have a lump of coal because they're doing.
How dare those consumers not consume?
Well, it's because they have all this inflation still, despite what they're saying is how Trump is causing this this affordability crisis. They're still reeling from the 20% inflation, or 22% inflation that has occurred over the last few years, and that's impacted them. You look at the Black Friday sales, for example, or Cyber Monday. Yes, sales are all-time high, but it's not because people bought more stuff. It's because prices were higher. So the whole affordability thing that persists, and that's likely going to continue heading into 2026. Now, of course, many people will blame tariffs, and they're partly correct. But even if you look, let's say, annual inflation rate excluding tariffs, that's still running at about 2.5%, which is still above the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation target, which they've missed for I think it's like 5 years straight. So the consumers, the shoppers, they're getting lumps of coal.
Lumps of coal for consumers and shoppers. Goodies for the average investor. Andrew Moran, Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for being here.
Happy festivals.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, head coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're joined today in this post-Christmas session by Mr. Tim Donner, Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show. Merry Christmas to you, Tim. Thanks for being here.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, happy New Year, happy Hanukkah. I think we've got them all in, don't
You've
we?
missed Festivus.
Festivus. Well, that's sort of isn't that a composite of all of them?
Which it is, yeah. They're all costing dollars. But yes, it is actually a composite of all the money that's been spent throughout the year. And I want to look at how we have expended some of those, our children's hard-earned inheritance over the last year. And one of those methods is the movies. People going to the movies. Now, Christmas time it's a great time for Christmas movies, of course. Although, in my opinion, there hasn't been a good Christmas movie made in the last 15 years. This winter, I watched Stalag 17, which is a superb movie. It's not necessarily a Christmas one, but it is Christmas based, and it's very funny. It's 1955, I think it was. And it's a superb movie. But Tim, specifically, let's dig down into the details here. And on the more important occasion than Christmas was a recent anniversary for you and your good lady wife, Lisa K. Donner. And and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And you decided to go to a Cinebistro, which I think is perhaps a wonderful idea. For those of our listeners who aren't familiar with it, this is not an advert for them, by the way, but I'm always fascinated by it. So what happens at a Cinebistro, Tim?
Well, I think this is, frankly, the future of movie theaters, because especially with Netflix now buying up Warner Brothers, there's a question as to whether Netflix will take all the classic Warner Brother properties and just limit them to streaming. And also you take one of the 5 major studios, Hollywood studios, out of play.
Yeah.
And so
that's 20% of your summer blockbusters disappeared. Yeah.
It's true. If you still want to call them blockbusters, but that's a separate discussion.
Sure.
What Cinebistro does, and there are other entries into this class of movie theaters, is you don't just show up, buy some popcorn, sit and watch a movie. What you do is you get there and you are treated to a sumptuous leather reclining seat. And you then order drinks and gourmet dinner. I mean, in other words, the thing that's amazing about the Cinebistro experience, and I've been to another one like it, is that it's not just, hamburgers and French fries and stuff. There's gourmet food, excellent meats and pasta and stuff like this. And so it's a full experience. You recline, you watch like it's in the comfort of your home, but you're being served dinner and drinks.
Let's clear.
We're at a restaurant. Yeah.
Let's clear up the really important point. When you say drinks, you're talking a licensed premises here, right?
We're talking a licensed premises.
How else could it seriously expect my customer?
Well, I don't think it would succeed if they didn't.
Sure.
Offer it.
Who wants a Coke with their steak? So Tim, right. So the big question here is the future of the movie industry. So we know that people do still go to the movies for really big, spectacular things. Like, for example, there was the Top Gun Maverick. I think that was 2024 rather than 2025. People went to see it in their droves. It was very popular. So people still do that. But I think the reason that cinema outlets, like the ones we've just been talking about, have to change is because the movies just aren't that appealing anymore. They're either so obsessed with the message that they're putting out, and this is my personal pet hate, is the colorblind casting, as they call it in historical period movies or shows.
The proper term, Mark, is diversity casting.
In the UK, they call it colorblind.
Sorry to correct you, but
let's delve into that briefly. So colorblind casting. What it essentially means in practice is you've got a story of, let's say, 1066, the Battle of Hastings, and there's a number of the real historical people who are now not white. They're some other particular ethnicity. And the argument for it is, well, we used a colorblind casting technique, as in the best actor got the role. And I'm actually all for that, but it's strange that it never happens to go the other way. We're not going to see a Shaka Zulu movie with Brad Pitt in the starring role. It's never going to happen, and we know it's never going to happen. So it reminds me of that saying about the USSR, or was it East Germany? And it was they're lying.
Not much of a difference there.
Yeah, they're lying to us. We know they're lying to us. They know that we know that they're lying to us, and on and on. And so I think, that's just one aspect, but the overall the stories that are coming out now, they seem to me to be almost pitifully weak and obsessed with messaging and social justice rather than actually trying to tell a good story. And Tim, I cannot say enough how much I appreciate a good story. I think stories are everything that has made the world what it is today, because it's stories passed down mouth to ear for millennia in some cases. And these are good stories, and they're sacrificing the story for the message. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that is probably starting to change, if not because strictly of the change of administration, the change of tenor in the country, the post-progressive era, the woke mind virus starting to diminish over time. But I think that it's a very hard habit for them to break because for some reason, Hollywood still feels like it's their job to preach to us what we should believe rather than providing us what we want to see. Look, people go to the movies or they watch them at home to escape. It's just that simple. Whether you escape with a sci-fi, with an action film, a romantic comedy, a rom-com, or no, whatever it is, there's a certain guard that goes up the moment you see some sort of politically correct move or action, and then you become suspicious of the whole rest of the movie.
Sure.
Because there's a message behind it instead of just telling the story. So what my wife Lisa and I have done for the better part of 40 years that we've been married is the moment we see evidence of a woke message, we turn it off immediately because you then lose confidence and you wind up saying, you're on edge saying, what are they going to preach to us next?
Yeah.
What's the next? What's the next virtue signaling?
Laura and I do the same. Yeah, we do the same with TV shows. We'll start watching something with hope. It's there's a saying in the UK. People welcome the Labour Party with hope and the Conservatives with relief. But we welcome like a new TV show or something with a bit of hope. Like this could be quite good, and the build-up's been great. And we don't watch a lot. We have young children, so we're not we don't get a lot of time for the screen. But as soon as something happens, we're like, let's turn it off. Let's not go into it, because that the show has lost, or the movie has lost authenticity, because the things that are politically correct, as I think it was Lenin who said, or Stalin, it doesn't mean it's correct, but it's politically correct. And so they lose this authenticity, and for that they lose the trust. And speaking of the USSR,
the point is, those movies don't do well.
Yeah, they really don't.
Release of the Snow White movie, I forget whether it's 24, 25.
Yeah.
And it was just replete with, symbols and characters who just weren't true at all to the original Snow White story, because they're trying to send a message. And the dangerous part of it, really, Mark, with most of these movies and TV shows, is that they lead you on. They make you think that it's just a straight drama or a crime story, whatever it is. You dig into it, you get 20, 30, 40 minutes into it, and then all of a sudden they hit you with the virtue signaling. And, you feel used and abused. And I think this is not just me. This is most everyone I talk to, most of whom, honestly, Mark, haven't even been to the movies in years because they just pretty much gave up. Yeah. And now what you see in the theaters are mostly sci-fi, animated movies, superheroes, stuff like this that really has a very limited appeal.
Sure.
But I guess Hollywood doesn't mind losing money, because they certainly do on most of these politically correct movies, and yet they persist.
Yeah, well, thank you, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, she persisted. We'll finish on this one note that I'm sure will ruin your new year, Tim. The classic novella by George Orwell, Animal Farm, which is a damning indictment of the communist push, and how these dreams of equality are really nothing more than pigs with their snouts in the trough. There's been a remake of the animated version of it that came out a little while back. Well,
Right. It was called
decades ago.
Animal House, right?
No, Gina
no.
Maloney.
Okay. I'm confused.
But it does
I'm
have
sorry.
Seth Rogen in it as Napoleon, the pig, which is an odd choice. But from everything I gather so far of this, what they've done is they've removed all of the this is why communism is bad, and this is what it leads to, and they've turned it into a filthy rich white oligarch is trying to take over the animal farm for his own fiscal gains. It's completely stripped the message out. And coming back to the idea of why stories are so important, Tim, a generation of kids now, when they think Animal Farm, they'll think of this new version, this 2025 version of Animal Farm that has lost its entire purpose and meaning. And they won't be able to learn the lessons in the same way that you and I learned them from either seeing the original animated version.
Well, what's the purpose? What is the purpose of the Animal Farm if not to unmask the evils of communism?
Yeah.
So that's the whole story.
Yeah.
So if you take you rip out the heart of the story, there's no story left. So who would ever want to go and see that except, basically progressives who like being fed stuff that, agrees with their twisted worldview of white supremacy, white privilege.
And the evils of capitalism, of course.
The evils of capitalism, exactly.
We are going to be back with Tim Donner after this short break discussing the scorecard for 2025. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain Mark Angelides, and we're continuing our conversation with longtime host of this here show, Mr. Tim Donner. Now, Tim, we went off on a bit of a tangent talking about movies and Christmas movies, etc. in the last segment. But now I wanted to go for a bit of an overview, if we can, of 2025 and really have a scorecard of how you saw the year going. Now, obviously, I guess the biggest thing last year was Donald Trump back in office. What would you say is the most significant thing that happened last year?
Well, I'd say that from a general standpoint, it was Trump laying the groundwork for radical reforms, some of which have already been done, such as basically getting rid of USAID, for example.
Yep.
And the efforts by DOJ to reduce some of the waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. It was, I would say, changing the tone of the U.S. military by appointing a guy who was very unconventional in Pete Hegseth. It's hard to even wrap your arms around, frankly, all the things that have changed since Donald Trump took office. You and I know this because we try to keep up with everything he's doing. And you, as editor-in-chief, know that you can't even do stories on everything that is worthwhile, because Trump is, he has an energy and a buzz to his presidency unlike any we've ever seen, especially the second time around. So I think, though, when we look back on 2025, we'll see that it was largely economically laying the groundwork for better economic growth, lower taxes, things like no tips on Social Security and on overtime. and tips overtime Social Security. These are brand new entries into the economy of the United States. We have no idea how those are going to work out, but they're designed to pump up economic growth. I think it's also very notable that Trump has, I think the most surprising thing may be the degree to which he has engaged in international diplomacy. I mean, he's intent on getting this Russia-Ukraine war ended. I have no idea whether he will or not. I suspect he won't be able to, because I don't think Vladimir Putin is interested in ending the war, because then he's going to be stuck with the wreckage of what he did, rather than being able to continue the fight and get his fellow countrymen behind it for whatever reason they would want to, after 1 million Russians have died in this war. But he stepped in, of course. He neutralized Iran's nuclear capability. He bombed the hell out of them, as he would say. And he also intervened in several long-standing conflicts, such as between India and Pakistan, and between Cambodia and Thailand, to name a couple. And I think people were surprised the degree to which he was involved internationally. And of course, the big thing that we're going to see is Venezuela, because it's not going to remain the way it is. And I think that the full court press to close the walls in around Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, will stand, I think, historically as one of the most significant things that he did. So, this is not like the Biden presidency where you can say, well, he did this one bill, he made this one decision. He did these 3 or 4 things. With Trump, it's so many things that it's very hard. Except to say that it's the fulfillment of everything that he hoped to do in his first term, but wasn't able to for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I think for me, the most significant change that he's wrought is he's actually changed the conception of what a strong border can be without even actually building the entire wall. We went from hundreds of thousands, millions of illegal crossings under the Biden presidency down to literally a trickle, just a few people here and there illegally crossing the border, the southern U.S. border. And this has all been done without crafting vast new laws, without spending the billions of dollars on border wall, although I believe there is money being spent on upkeep of the wall and some new miles. But it's not as though he's made the United States into a fortress, but he's changed the conception, the perception of what people see when they think, well, we can't really control it. But how do you control so many thousands of miles of border? Apparently you can, and it's just by having political will. And I think that will really be the legacy of Trump's 2025. Tim, I wish you a very happy new year, and we'll see you in 2026. Thanks for being here.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'd like to thank our guests this week, Andrew Moran, Joe Schaefer, and of course, Tim Donner. And adding my thanks to you, the listeners and viewers who take the time to join us each and every week. You are appreciated. Merry Christmas to you. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation. And this presentation is no endorsement.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.